Hello, everyone. My name is Thank God Ebenezer, and I'm a bioinformatician at the European Bioinformatics Institute. And today we're going to be talking to you basically about the digital innovation in Africa for sustainable agri-environment, mainly the proposed initiative for the Africa Biogenome Project. And I would first of all introduce the co-chairs and also members of the panel who will basically be engaging and stimulating this discussion. So on the panel today will be Professor Nicola Moda, the PI for H3 Bionet, and also Professor Apollinia Jinkeng, the director for CTLG, and also at the Roslin Institute, and Dr. Catherine Ziomo, and the director of Baker Inri, and Dr. Simplis Noala, the head of agriculture at the Department of Agriculture, rather, at the African Union, and Dr. Olivia Pressig, the CEO for for Inkaba Biotech, one of the African companies that basically support genome sequencing in Africa, and Dr. Ralph Vogelsang. Ralph Vogelsang is the oversees mainly the EMEA, European Middle East and Africa region for Pacific Biosciences. I will also have Dr. Mitchell Mbochua, the Deputy Director for African Women in Agricultural Research and Development, and Dr. Rob Davey, the Head of Infrastructure at the Elam Institute, and Dr. Kate Brooksbank. She oversees training at the European Bioinformatics Institute, and also Dr. Alan Budi with CABI, and Shakira, as well as Professor Justin Peter, and Dr. Shakira Salifo is at the University of Abomey in Calavin. Thank you, everyone, for joining the workshop today. And Professor Apollinia would basically be chairing the session alongside Dr. Catherine Ziomo. So I will just go to the next item on the agenda, mainly, which has to do with telling us about providing a background, rather, to the proposed Africa Biogenome Initiative, and also helping us to talk about this and have some objective and things we need to look out to particularly. Thank you. Hello, my name is Thank God Ebenezer, and I'm a bioinformatician at the European Bioinformatics Institute. Today, I will be talking to us about the digital innovation in Africa for a sustainable agri-environment DAISY network. And the DAISY network, mainly the proposed DAISY initiative, is a community network to support genome-guided sustainable agricultural practices in Africa, and with an overarching goal to actually sequence the genomes of biological organisms endemic in the agri-environment in Africa. Mainly the idea is to see how do we actually move from sequence to application, generally looking at how do we use the genomic data in Africa for crops and livestock in terms of looking at diversity and variations, and also see how do we translate this to mainly applications in terms of crop and animal improvement and health. And that thing is to see how do we use this data to actually improve food systems and well-being, human, animals, and plants. And finally, how would this data kind of inform policy and also drive or make an improvement in socioeconomics for communities in the agri-environment in Africa. So, and there are other networks, similar networks, doing something similar, embarking on similar effort. For instance, the African Orphan Crops Consortium, which aims to sequence orphan crops in Africa, and they are currently doing this. And the idea is to see how do we make DAISY an integrated platform whereby we could actually sequence both crops and livestock, and focusing on other aspects of endemic species in terms of plants and animals in Africa. So what are the challenges? For us, we aim to achieve the challenges of addressing the goals of the UN Sustainable Development Goal 02, which mainly has to do with zero hunger. And one of the things we aim to do is to see how do we make a change in terms of Africa's food and agriculture system, and seeing how do you use that information to actually apply it towards nourishing several, actually many communities that depend on some of these systems in Africa. And one key thing we aim to do is to see how do we use this data to actually end hunger and achieve food security and improve nutrition, as well as promote sustainable agriculture in Africa. So the aim basically is to align this with the UN Sustainable Development Goal, and more importantly, to also align this with the Africa Agenda 2063 goal that also has to do with improving agricultural production in Africa and ending hunger, as well as zero hunger on the continent. So, and so far, we've been working on this network over the past several months, and we've been having a series of meetings with potential and prospective partners. And we've also identified the state of infrastructure programs on the continent. This is just an overview on this slide, and there are many more. And there are some of these structures and programs are continental. For instance, the History Africa, Human Heritage and Health, Acacia, mainly has to do with crop improvement in Africa, and the African Orphan Crop Consortium, AOCC, which aims to sequence orphan crops in Africa. And there are also other regional programs, for instance, the West African Virus Epidemiology for Food Security, mainly in West Africa and also in East Africa. We also have other programs by the Biosciences Eastern and Central Africa, and several other regional programs on the continent. There are also other international efforts, for instance, through the IITA, International Institute of Tropical Agriculture. And some of these programs also have some, are also tied to some programs in the Africa Union, for instance, and in order to actually achieve some of the objectives in agriculture and crop and livestock improvement and health. So what do we envisage with this mainly? So for us, we kind of envisage three things through this proposed initiative. The first thing we envisage is to actually build and increase collaborations, and as well as capacities, and through our participation in this network, and also to mainly contribute to the genomic resources in Africa, and through our participation, through actually participating in this biodiversity genomics community, and building Africa's genomic non-human biological genomic community, basically in agriculture, and also see how we can use this genomic data to actually inform and drive policy as well as social economics. So prospective partners, as I mentioned previously, we've been having a series of engagements with prospective partners, and the idea is to actually kind of build some support and explore what we need to do, as well as decide on the sort of objectives we need to focus on. So we have identified prospective partnerships with the African Union, Inter-African Bureau for Animal Resources, the Africa Academy of Sciences, the West African Virus Epidemiology for Food Security, and the Earth Biogenome Project, and the Pacific Biosciences. Many series of conversation has been ongoing, and there are several other things that are currently developing or evolving within the network. And at the moment, we are currently putting together a white paper, which have received a huge number of support from scientists on the continent and outside the continent, actually contributing to this to the text for this white paper. So we're hoping that over the next several months, once we have a white paper that is ready, we'll begin to look into some of these prospective partnerships more closely, and also begin to look at how do we move forward from that point. So, and this is basically what we've been doing over the past few months, mainly engagement, identifying what we need to do. And some of these efforts have actually been supported and also being coordinated by several scientists in Africa and also in the UK. Mainly, there are about 8 scientists currently supporting this effort, and they are based in North Africa, East Africa, Central Africa, and Southern Africa, and also West Africa. So finally, the network is currently being advised by Rob Davey and Apollinia Jinkeng. Apollinia Jinkeng is at the Center for Tropical Lifestyle Genetics and Health. Rob Davey is at the Elam Institute. And I would like to thank everyone who has so far been involved in the development of this initiative, this proposed initiative. And also, I would like to thank the coordinating team and all the prospective partners who have actually made themselves available in terms of having a series of meetings and engagements. And I would like to thank all the scientists who are contributing to the white paper we're currently putting together. And finally, I would like to thank every one of you for listening to this short presentation. Thank you so much. Hello. Thank you once again. And that was just a bit of an overview or background to the proposed DAISY network, and mainly kind of letting us know what we've been doing over the past few months, what we aim to do, and also try to also discuss some of the objectives that we aim to achieve. So today I would be, basically, as I mentioned previously, we have 2 co-chairs, Professor Apollinia Jinkeng and Dr. Catherine Diomo, and I would be handing over to Apollinia, who will mainly be chairing the session 1, from the problems solutions point of view, in terms of what we aim to do with the DAISY network and how we aim to achieve some of the objectives we are kind of laying down. Apollinia, please.
So thank you, thank God, and welcome everybody, wherever you are connecting from. We are really excited to have assembled a number of eminent scientists, leaders from the continent. So the main thing today is really to explore other pathways towards feeding Africa and generating enough food sustainably to make our food systems very resilient. So Tangot provided an overview of this initiative. And I should say that this is a very, very young initiative, but it's really taking shape very nicely. And what's happening now is really connecting this to existing initiatives on the continent. We have people from the human health landscape, to the private sector, to academia, and policy makers. I think we have the right ingredients to sort of develop an initiative that will set us on the course to, producing food for the growing population and being very careful about our environment. The main thing here is really for us to tap and harness the endless or the very diverse genetic diversity that we have in Africa. Whether you're looking at it from the livestock, from crop improvement, or other initiative, I think this is what we have. Without taking much time, I want to first register apologies from our colleague from Morocco who couldn't be with us. He fell sick at the last minute, and we wish him really, really well. So let me first turn to Dr. Simplice Nwala from the Africa Union. Simplice, you have been thanked for participating in this session. And in your current role, you have demonstrated very strong leadership on how to drive innovation to food production in Africa. So can you please help us, take your view on how through this conversation we can bring in the diversity that we are planning to harness to deliver on the 2063 Africa Union agenda? Thank you. Are you there?
I'm on. Thank you very much, Apolline. And straight to the questions, since the beginning of 2000, agriculture is on top of the policy discussions at the African Union through the CAADP agenda. And in 2014, the head of state took a declaration, commonly known as the Malabo Declaration on Agricultural Growth and Transformation in Africa. Now, how do we achieve the goals that are set in the Malabo Declaration? And I will try to answer to this question by making reference to three major things where bioinformatics and genomics could assist the continent. The first declaration is to end hunger on the continent by 2025. How do we do this? We know the potential that the continent has both in crop production and in animal production, but this potential remains untapped. So it's important, and we see genomics here play a great role in facilitating access to improved seed, quality improved seed. I speak here to speed of highly yielding seed, drought resistant, animals that have very high feed efficiency ratio, and so on and so forth. So it's important that if we want to improve productivity and production on the continent, we need to embrace genomics. The second thing is about nutrition. How do we end malnutrition on the continent? It is one thing to produce enough, but it's more important to produce quality food if we want to end nutrition on the continent. And here again, genomics can play a role in advancing what we call nutrition-sensitive initiatives on the continent by working on issues like biofortification, improving the quality of milk, and so on and so forth. And the third one, which is quite important, is facilitating trade. We all know that Africa from January 2021 would commence trade within what we call the African Continental Free Trade Area. And one of the challenge in dealing with trade across the continent will be issues related to food safety and SPS. And here again, genomics can assist with gene markers related to the virulence of foodborne diseases, related to antimicrobial resistance and rest, can assist in profiling the risk and facilitating the formulation of what we call science-based food safety regulation. So basically, these are the three areas where I see a powerful role of genomics in advancing the CAADP agenda and the Agenda 2063. Now, where are we as a continent in all this? I think currently we are more consumers of genomic studies than we do it. And one of the challenge is really the problem related to capacity, both human capacity and infrastructural capacity. To this end, the African Union, through its agency, the African Union Development Agency, NEPAD, established since the 10-15 years, networks of bioscience, because we felt it is important to build human capacity, and the networks have this mandate to really strengthen the human capacity on the continent in bioscience and looking at biogenomics here. We established two hubs, one in Nairobi dealing with animal resources, with livestock, and that was what it was intended for, and another one in Dakar dealing with crop and food security in general. These are some of the things that the African Union has taken as deliberate effort to advance genomic studies on the continent. More importantly, the continent working on policy issues, because one of the key challenge of embracing genomics is the misperception, both by the consumers and the policymakers. So with our specialized technical offices, IBA, SAFGRAT, and the rest, we have been working first to create more awareness through advocacy, communication, so as to avoid the misconception and to increase, for government to increase investment in agricultural research with earmarked funding for genomic studies. We think it is important, if we want as a continent to advance in that agenda, that the country should invest more and earmark funds for genomics studies. On the other hand, because we know genomic studies or genomics research will certainly affect the genetic base of the continent, we have developed, together with partners, a common, what we call a common action plan for the implementation of the Nagoya Protocol. And with this common action plan, we have also developed a set of guidelines for material transfer agreement. This is currently being rolled out in the countries, and we think that once these set of legal frameworks are in place, that will create a pathway for the uptake of genomics in agriculture and food security. We are convinced as the African Union that we cannot and we will not achieve the Malabo goals and target if the continent do not take deliberate action to embrace genomics and bioinformatics. This is what I want to say. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nwala. So you've touched on a very important point, and I think from now on we can count you even as a stronger ambassador of the science in the policy making cycles. So let me move to our colleague and friend, Nicola Mulder, who has been leading the H3 Africa Health, Human and Heredity in Africa. So I think we're trying to build on the knowledge base and the expertise that they've developed, to drive, some of the breakthroughs and innovation when it comes to human health. Nicola, I think it would be important for you to share with us, what are the challenges that you face, because we're commonly talking about capacity building, infrastructure, having policy engagement, driving resources sustainably, and retaining scientists in Africa. I think you have a lot to share with us. Let me just throw it back to you for you to give us, in 2 minutes, your experience compiled more than 10 years leading H3 Africa. Take it over, please.
Thanks, Apollinaire. So I lead H3 Bionet, which is the Pan-African Bioinformatics Network within H3 Africa. So H3 Africa is a bigger consortium of other projects too. And the consortium has a number of challenges to address, and we've managed to do this successfully, I think, by working together as a collective. So even though each individual project and each network has its own set of deliverables, we've really pulled together to work collectively to solve problems as a group. So in H3 Bionet, all of the challenges about genomics and the power of genomics and bioinformatics that have just been mentioned by the previous speaker, that's exactly what we were trying to address. So when we started H3 Bionet in 2012, there were pockets of expertise in genomics and bioinformatics, but these were very small and there was very little critical mass. So we really started from the beginning. We knew that the major challenges were infrastructural and human capacity. So collectively, the H3 Africa projects have built the research infrastructure in terms of equipment and consumables and technicians. What we've done on the bioinformatics, so we're putting computing infrastructure, but then we had to train people to use that infrastructure. So there's no point having shiny equipment if you don't know how to use it. Then we worked on, everything was needs driven. So what were the actual needs and how was this, what was the context? What were the individual challenges on the ground in Africa that might not be the same in other countries? And then we addressed those systematically with a parallel training session of training systems administrators, clinicians, bioinformaticians, bioinformatics users, so a range of audiences that could address different pieces of the puzzle. So that was building the human capacity and then obviously building the tools and the workflows. So we then looked at what workflows are required, built those workflows around existing tools so that we could have reproducible science that worked on African infrastructures, African computing infrastructures, how to move data across the continent, how to enable African researchers to interpret their data. And I think the working together as a network was the main thing that we had that allowed us to achieve this, and also flexibility. So adapting quickly to COVID, to big demand. So we rolled out big remote classroom courses to train in bioinformatics. And this infrastructure is now ready to move to the next level. That was all on human genomics and pathogens. Now we can easily roll this out to other forms of genomics, so agriculture, food security, any other kinds of genomics. So we really started by building the ground from the ground up, and then training across the spectrum of audiences that needed to use genomics.
Thank you, Prof. Mulder, and you've been very, very generous in sharing what have been the lessons that you've learned and what you've put in place so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. You know, if you have all the equipment of data management, data systems in place, there is no need for anyone else to try and do it. So really, I think this is a good connection for the leaders of this project or this initiative to consider. Once you have the ACGT, so which is your DNA, whether it comes from plants or animals or crops, it doesn't really necessarily matter. They can all sit on the same server. So let me now turn to Dr. Josiah Mutuku, an East African born, but resident of West Africa. I think you have the advantage of knowing the two parts of Africa and also working outside of Africa. How do you bring the effort that you're leading in West Africa, the West Africa viral epidemiology for food security? How do you connect into this? And we also want to share your perspective from somebody who has worked outside of the continent and who is now back. You know, what are the things that you can do to ensure that, you know, we have the connection to whoever we need to be connected to, and that we actually do great science on the continent? Over.
Okay, thank you very much, Apollinaire. So first, you talked about the connections, and this reminds me of a slide that you used to share with us about the bridges that we would see any African institution occupying, whether it is linking science that is done outside of the continent. So in this case, I'm talking about in advanced institutions, and science that is conducted among the national players, and how an institution can play the role of linking these two worlds together. Now, if I could just briefly touch on the issues that I see where this network could help to facilitate, you know, crop improvement, which is really, like Apollinaire said, my expertise. So I look at this from three perspectives. One is the problems that we have on crop improvement, and I will share a little bit of this. And of course, the topmost, and I'm happy that Dr. Simplice has identified this as a serious need, is funding. So, you know, national governments owning what it is that is being done within the continent, and the promoting priority areas for their population. Then, of course, if I'm as a plant scientist thinking about what used to happen previously, I mean, I don't have time to wait for 25 years to develop one variety. So I want to shorten this time as much as possible. So this is another area where I think genomics can be used to, you know, for the applications around genomics can be used to fast track, you know, generation of new varieties. There's also issues nowadays relating to climate variability. Climate change is becoming an important issue in both crop production, or whether it is establishment of new pathogens or vectors of those pathogens, and etc. There is also issues dealing with low productivity, because, you know, we have increasingly we see two types of farmers. There are farmers who are continually growing indigenous crops, and there are farmers who are continually growing you know, crops for markets, you know, cash crops and stuff like that, and how we can use genomics to link these two issues. Then, of course, there are issues relating to, say, for example, absence of value chain. This is not really an entirely science question, but it is something that is very, very important. And how do we link what we are doing to the value chains that exist within our working environments? In this case, I'm thinking about us as scientists working in a sphere of other players. How do we link what other players are doing with what we are doing? And then, very importantly, and I'm very happy that Dr. Nick, Professor Nick mentioned about this, is data. Data handling, data storage. Do we have capacity within the continent to handle the data that we are producing, and in fact, to even store it? And in this case, I'm talking about my own experience, because we are struggling right now to buy space, cloud space for data storage. We are generating a lot of data, but then we do not have you know, resources to store that data within the continent, even for our own use. So how are we going to mitigate these issues? Then, of course, This data, the stuff that we are going to be producing, the large-scale genomics we are producing here could help us now more precisely to understand reproductive biology of whatever either crop or animal species we are going to be working on. Are there important nutritional value components that we can try to leverage when now in this case we are thinking about the consumer? Are we doing precision phenotyping and genotyping using this data? Are we improving these things in terms of tolerance or resistance to various biotic and abiotic stresses? Do we have proper information on the degree of natural variation that exists in those species? And do we have the genetic basis for whatever traits that we have discovered from this data? So these are some of the things that I think we can try to research from genomics data. But how would we? So I have a small idea about some solutions that we can try to implement. This list is by all extensions not exhaustive, but some of these would include allocation of funding, applying genomics for cultivar development, as I said, and in fact matching this with the local preferences. As a producer, you want to give the thing that is the biggest, the sweetest, but you need to know what the consumer wants. Maybe they are looking for high nutritional value, affordability, proper aroma, and stuff like that. And then can we, as I said, employ genomics to accelerate cultivar development? And I'm very happy, again, Dr. Simplis mentioned about this, the issue about capacity building, both individual and institutional capacity. As I said, employment of both instruments that can conduct genomics within the continent, and data handling and storage. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Josiah. I think we can spend more time discussing this, and you've touched on a number of things, including data. We'll come to data because I think the fourth agricultural revolution is going to be around data. So if you cannot handle data these days, you have no access to data. If you don't know how to learn generate new information from data, then you're operating in the dark. So really, it's been great. I think this is, as it were, just managing to break the ice, and I hope we can take this conversation offline. Let me hand over the next session of this conversation to Dr. Catherine Ziomo, the Director of Bioscience Eastern and Central Africa. Catherine, take it over from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Apollonia. Thank you, everyone, for attending this. I will start by introducing the speakers for this next session, but before I do that, maybe give a brief background about this next session. This next session is about the dimensions, how we can further now support the genomics. We do have a lot of resources in Africa in terms of crops, in terms of plant species, but how do we harness that and support that into developing varieties, into developing products that can be useful, or how do we translate the research, the genomics research, into practical applications or products that can be used by consumers. So on this next panel, we have Dr. Oliver Pressig from Mqaba Biotech, South Africa, and we have Dr. Ralph Vogsling from Pacific Biosciences, Germany, and then we have Dr. Michelle Mbo Chao from the African Women Agricultural Research Development based here in Kenya. Then we have Dr. Rob Davey from Elham Institute in the UK. We also have Dr. Kath Brooksbank, who is from the European Bioinformatics Institute in the UK, and Dr. Alan Buddy from the Center for Agriculture and Bioscience International in the UK. So we do have a diversity of scientists who have contributed in diverse ways to bioinformatics, to genomics. And I'll start now the first question to Dr. Kath Brooksbank and Dr. Rob Davey. So between the two of you, Kath and Rob, you do share several years of contributions in bioinformatics. And the question that I have for you, based on your experiences, what do you think are the three top bioinformatics training challenges and needs in Africa? And how do you think the Africa Biogenome Initiative could help solve these problems? And please also draw parallels from your training and capacity building experiences. So over to you, Kath and Rob.
Okay, shall I go first? Thank you for that lovely introduction, Catherine. I would highlight something that actually Nikki has already touched on really beautifully, which is the need to train a broader science community. So not just the kind of classical researchers, many of whom we're interacting with at this conference, but the agronomists, the public health workers, the environmental scientists. We need to be able to support their use of genomics and of bioinformatics in supporting real decision making in the field, in the clinic, in threatened ecosystems. And genomics and bioinformatics are seldom a part of the course programs that are used to train these scientists or these professionals. And that's often because of a lack of confidence in teaching it. Those who are training on these programs tend to come from a background that is less data intensive, less genomics intensive. And so there's a lack of willingness to train on these topics. And so that's a kind of vicious cycle that we need to break, actually. And I think we need a two-pronged approach to that. There's training pre-existing professionals through continuing professional development. And there's also support for lecturers so that they can do a really top job of teaching people who are going into these more applied professions to make full use of genomics and bioinformatics. And then if I could steal another one, I would say it was inequitable access to bioinformatics training. My experience in this is from running the Cabana project, which is a capacity strengthening project in bioinformatics in Latin America. And in Latin America, there are often very good opportunities to learn first-rate science methodologies and theory in the major cities. But then there are very few opportunities when you go out into the regions. And we really need to tap into the huge breadth of intelligent scientists and potential scientists out there who can help us to solve this problem, and we're really only scratching the surface. And with that, I'll hand over to Rob.
Thanks very much, Kath, and thank you for the lovely introduction, Catherine. So yeah, I think as Professor Mulder said, that genomics isn't really just data generation. You need infrastructure, and it's becoming increasingly extensive. We need more and more of it to fulfill the requirements of this large data storage and analysis problem that we have. I think the data generation efforts that I've seen are often kind of plagued by greater good programs where there might be very little maintenance or support mechanisms, and of course consumables for these efforts remain expensive. There's no changes in the ability to purchase these consumables. So if you kind of take those elements, it's often difficult to align what is dedicated training in these aspects with actually delivering genomics for research aims. So they're maybe playing off against each other. So I'd say there's a big requirement for this in-depth training in computational sciences with a particular focus on practical aspects that raise the bar for fundamental skills, but also are directly applicable and aligned directly with food security challenges in African communities. So I think one of the things that's missing is this capacity for in-field data generation and analysis that isn't just centralized in larger institutions. There are technologies out there that can fulfill this. I'm not saying they're the only one. They all work together, and modern genomics often needs all these different platforms to function well. So as Dr. Nwala mentioned, there needs to be some really nice concrete strategies to strengthen this move from consumers to producers, because this will inevitably, in terms of training and skills, lead to retention of skilled bioinformaticians and genomics experts across African countries and domains of research. So, as Dr. Josiah mentioned, that the access to computational and data storage capacity is one aspect, but in my experience, I think this needs to be associated with train the trainer programs. So I'm heavily involved in the Carpentries organization. I know some other people on this panel are as well. So I'm slightly biased in saying that I think it's a good thing. But you know, this effort, the Carpentries organization has hundreds of instructors around the world. But if you look at the recent map, and admittedly, this is people you have to self-register, but there seem to be only 30 registered instructors in Africa as a whole. And a lot of those are focused down in South Africa. So although this is only one effort, I think this shows there's lots to do to train in-country experts who can lead the next generation of African researchers in this data science best practice and you know, really direct applications of those skills to the research that they're already doing in Africa, of course. So I think what the Earth Biogenome Project and this proposed Africa Biogenome Initiative could do is maybe provide the kind of well-established coordinated program with an elaborate support network, of which, again, many people are on this call who've already been doing this for many years. So the Earth Biogenome Project has this huge amount of expertise in technology and informatics techniques, but they can only really be empowered and made useful by working with, you know, this huge, extensive life science research expertise that's in Africa. You know, you need to put those two things together. So yeah, that'll be it for me.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Kath. These are really important points that you raised, that we need to train confident bioinformaticians and people who can translate that knowledge into, or break it down into something that is practical, that is applicable to the end users. And that's here at Becker, we see that a lot trying to work with partners, like bioinformatics or genomics is a big term when you go out there, but how do we break it down so that even a technician working on a particular project or a particular crop can be able to apply that knowledge and develop varieties and do the science that they need to do in order to have an end product. So thank you very much for those comments. And also the need for training the trainers, that, you know, capacity building has ripple effects. You train one person and then they're able to go and train their team or the people that they work with. And that is a very important point. So I'm going to move on to the next question is for Oliver and Ralph. PacBio is one of the world's leading genomic technology companies. Given the utility of PacBio in producing long sequence breeds, as well as involvement in other regional and national biogenome efforts, what are the top 3 challenges or problems you think PacBio technology could help solve in this proposed biogenome effort in Africa, and how will these problems be solved? And I think these are important points in that as we look at public-private partnerships, what do you think also are the contributions of PacBio as we look at an initiative like the Biogenome Project? So over to you, Ralph and Oliver.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine, for the question. And I think I can take the first question and Oliver can probably take the second question. But first, I want to start by saying that we at PacBio are really very proud and thankful to become partner of this really exciting Tree of Life Africa initiative. As you have already mentioned, we are currently involved in many global biodiversity sequencing projects as a sort of a backbone technology. The main reason for that is actually the fact that we have introduced what we call now hi-fi long read sequencing, which is kind of unique as it provides for the first time both long and accurate Sanger quality like reads. In addition, we have brought down the cost for the sequencing significantly by launching our Sequel II system last year. And just yesterday, we introduced an upgrade on the Sequel II system, which delivers those hi-fi reads right out of the box without extra compute requirements. So together, hi-fi sequencing and Sequel II enables cost-efficient de novo assembly of contiguous, highly accurate and haplotype resolved reference genomes, even those of polyploid genomes. That's the first thing. And the second is that hi-fi reads will also facilitate gene annotation in these genomes by sequencing the full-length RNA using our established IsoSeq protocol. This opens the door to map a comprehensive set of splice variants which are being formed under various physiological conditions. And last but not least, we have just released a protocol for minimal DNA input requirement, which is now down to just 5 nanograms and which will allow the generation of high quality genomes even from tiny single individuals. And now I want to turn it over to Oliver from INCABA, who would like to comment on how we can bring these solutions to the African continent.
Okay, thank you, Ralph, and also the organizers for giving INCABA Biotech here the chance to contribute. First of all, we call ourselves Africa's Genomics Company. So we are a private company based in South Africa with a network all over sub-Saharan Africa. And we are PacBio's distributor. And as Ralph mentioned, there's exciting technology here with the hi-fi sequencing reads that we can now offer, because we have our own laboratory that offers genomic services, and we decided half a year ago to acquire a Sequel II platform for our lab. And unfortunately, due to COVID-19, the installation has been delayed, but we are very confident that by end of the year, we are able to offer services, and this will help to produce high fidelity reads with the Sequel II on the African continent. And then, as we obviously are the distributor and we also offer a whole range of other products, we can also establish laboratories to use their own Sequel II system to produce data as well. So we can help all over Africa with this technology. And obviously, this can be for labs that are part of this Africa Biogenome project or other projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. And thank you for sharing about the importance of having sequence data in terms of finding solutions or finding or developing improved varieties. Definitely this will improve, will create resources for crops that important for Africa's food security, which do not have the resources. So having such platforms or such the availability of sequences will definitely improve. So we're running out of time, and I'll have the last question being addressed by Takira only, and just one person only. So the question goes, partnership framework is at the heart of the proposed Africa Biogenome Project. From your experience in academia, research institutes, NGOs, what should we agree could be the best fit and solution-based partnership framework that could work for this project in Africa? And also, how do we channel efforts to deliver on the UN SDGs and the AU 2063 agenda as well? How do we connect or align this initiative with other national programs or priorities? So we do have, we're only left with 1 minute. If you can just compress your answer in a minute.
Thank you very much. In first, I think that the very important thing to do is to create a research community, and it is what we are all already doing. And it is very important to engage all stakeholders at the beginning of the project. And the useful technique to this is stakeholders mapping. And we have to identify for each stakeholders the kind of partnership, for example, funding partnership, technology partnership, or others we want or we need from them. It is also important to define the role and the benefit of everyone. It is relevant to keep our mind that all partnership must be based on transparency, equity, and mutual benefits. So we can have a partnership between private, public, and civil society sectors. And through public and private partnership, we can create African Research Network on animal and plant biogenome. And we will bring together all action, and the main objective will be to produce quality gene that meet better the expectation of consumers, farmers, and breeders from the point of view, the nutrition, security, food security, and the environment. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chakra. That was quite loaded. Thank you so much for the short time that I gave you. And the points that you raised about collaborative research and exploiting the synergies that each and every stakeholder brings to the table. Definitely for Biogenome to really move forward, we need to exploit and really look at those synergistic linkages and partnerships very, very closely, especially now public-private partnerships to embrace those best the practices and also improve on efficiency and effectiveness on how we do our work. So thank you very much. Thank you to all the panelists who answered the questions. I'll move back to the chair. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Catherine, for coordinating this session. We've been reminded that we have about 10 minutes from 5:51. So I think we can just maybe respond to answer two to three questions. So I don't know if Anne has been following. So Anne, I don't know if you have like two questions we can respond to from the chat box. Yes. Yes, so we could just read that out. Maybe Alan can respond to read.
Yes, so the first question I think I can direct to Dr. Nwala. And the question is on the Nagoya Protocol and how it will impact African participation in EBP and which countries will face the biggest obstacles.
So I think you're muted, Dr. Nwala.
No, I'm back now. Thank you very much, Anne, for this interesting question. Yes, I think there is no doubt that the full implementation of the Nagoya Protocol by African Union member states will certainly enhance their participation in the EBA. Nobody can really dispute that. We need to strengthen the capacity of our countries to be able to fully implement the Nagoya Protocol. Now, the real issue, and you asked me what countries will face the biggest obstacle. I would say bluntly, the countries who are not implementing the protocol, because the issue today is that this protocol has been ratified by many countries, but they need to be embedded now into their national legislations. And unless this is done, the implementation becomes a challenge. So we are working with the countries to try first to implement through the Common Action Plan to not ratified, because many of them have ratified it, to embed this protocol or the element of this protocol in their national legislations. And then now we will strengthen their capacity for negotiation and so on and so forth. So we need to do that. And unless we do that, I think our participation in the EBP will continue to be weak as it is now. Thank you.
So,
thank you very much, Dr. Nwala, for that. Apollinaire, you want to add on that?
Yeah, so we have a little challenge. We have 5 minutes, but we've left out a very important dimension, which is women in science. We are doing well on this panel here. We see women scientists, but I think it's important for Michelle to use 90 seconds to bring that perspective. How do we engage, other female scientists like yourself to move up? And then, with that, we can then move to a close.
Thank you, Apollinaire. Thank you very much, at least to give me a few minutes, because I was already going to be mad that always when we have such great subjects, we always miss on the socioeconomics, which I think are very important when we have to discuss the adoption of such technologies. We are talking about genomics. We are talking about how this can help us grow quality food to feed our populations. We are talking about lifting people out of poverty. We are talking about how we make sure that these technologies can be adopted appropriately. Because most of the time, these technologies are not localized. The target beneficiaries, we don't even care about them. And sometimes we don't even know what are their needs. So in many occasions, we end up having technologies, good ones, but at the end of the day, the adoption rates are very low. So for us, for these things to really take up in Africa, we think it's very important as we build capacity to make sure that we're building the capacity of our scientists, and especially the women and the youth who are engaging in different technology design development. So for us, we look at it from the perspective of continue to build capacity by forging different partnerships and investment, especially to ensure that we can move the research from the lab to the farm to increase the productivity, but also to the market. I talked about providing livelihoods, to increase the profitability, and then to ensure that it's not just a question of bringing technology, but it's also a question of how we make sure that there are social outcomes behind everything that we do that will benefit to all the population, not just to certain groups, but definitely to all the Africans who need to feed themselves, but also to make a living.
Okay, thank you so much. We have just 2 minutes, and I just want Dr. Alan to just, in 20, 30 seconds, how do you think we could do this? I mean, from your experience with Kabi, in 20 seconds, please, because we need to stop this.
Yes, I mean, very rapidly. I mean, basically, Kabi is an international organization. We got 49 member countries that own us. 17 of them are in Africa. So we've got people in Africa doing work in country, and that's our history, is working with creating partnerships across the world. And in Africa, we're very strong on the ground. We've got centers in Zambia, Ghana, and Kenya. So we're already building up a strong capacity there. And hopefully we can build on this genomics explosion and work together for the future.
Right. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for coming and also for helping to stimulate this conversation. And we will also be reaching out to every one of us, basically with regards to the next step as we begin to develop this proposed initiative. Thank you so much.